What's going on, Workforce? Brian and Elioaux here from the Eorzean Archives today as a part of a collab. Thank you so much, Elioaux. Guys, if you're not following Eorzean Archives, tagged in this video, coming up on 2,000 subscribers. If you guys haven't seen their awesome lore content, please, let's get them to 2K. I think, and beyond, and to the moon, you know? But Elioaux,
yeah, absolutely.
Hey, dude, obviously, Yoshi P talking about 10 years, and that's what we're going to kind of be talking about here. But obviously you're just really big into the lore. I've been really big into the lore. I'm happy that you've been making content around lore. I think 14 is better for it because of that. Why don't you take just a brief minute, introduce yourself outside of what I've kind of just done a poor job at, and then let's talk about what we want to see for this for the February 18th thing.
Sounds like a plan. So I am Elioaux. I am one of the 3 members of the Eorzean Archives. We're basically a group of 3. Well, I'm the sort of singular content creator for YouTube, whereas Niniri is our article writer who writes articles for our website, and Isidoril is our technical expert. I am super into the Final Fantasy XIV lore. I joined in about the waning days of Stormblood, and so I've been trying to catch up in the 2.5 years since then.
Oh, fantastic. You know, and I think you guys are doing a great job. I really enjoyed your, what is a tombstone video, you know? So I don't know if you've had to delete anything.
No, not as of yet, though. I'm worried. I'm constantly checking, thinking, oh no, what happens if we have a bit of an apocalypse?
I always wonder, like, on just as a humorous note, is that like I have all these like flubs of like me trying to like, what's going on? We're and it's like, and then I don't ever like go back and really kind of clean it up and just throw it. Eventually, I'm like, I get to a point where I start running out of hard drive space, so I look for short little things. But I always wonder, like, you know, if at some point someone's like, you know, like grandkids are like, oh, here's granddad's hard drive. And it's like, oh man, he has a stutter.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I just recorded a 5-hour podcast on like the first map of Endwalker with Niniri, and about an hour of that is just unusable. So I'm just like, part of me wants to save that and just put it in a time capsule and see what come back to that 10 years from now.
Well, let's talk about 10 years from now. So obviously this isn't going to be spoilery. Like, so for anybody who hasn't seen Endwalker or Shadowbringers, whatever, this isn't a spoiler cast. So we're going to be talking more, in my mind, our hopes, our dreams, you know, are like what we want to see happen, because in my mind, the story is concluded, right? Will other characters show up? Maybe yes or no. But I really want to hear from you. I've obviously shared my theory, so I'm more just like kind of like, what is the community saying? What are they thinking? What deep down on the 18th do you think Yoshi P shows up and shows us? Is it a big reveal? Is it small? What's your take?
Yeah, so for my money, I think if you think about the Hydaelyn and Zodiac arc, you know, as concluded, right? The question is, where do we go next? And I feel like the implications that we get from Yoshi P and sort of other things is that it's going to be a very sort of exploratory, just kind of us being an adventurer sort of sentiment. And within that, I think then what you expect kind of the next bit to be is definitely exploring, you know, Hydaelyn as a planet, which then kind of leaves us with Meracydia and the New World in terms of like content. And then beyond that, there's so many different stories that they could do, because they could do, you know, the Sea of Stars, they could do the 13th Shard, you know, there's a bunch of different ways they could go content-wise. But then that leaves the question of, where do they go in terms of quality of life? Do we get things like, you know, open maps a la something like Guild Wars 2 compared to the sort of, you know, isolated maps that we have right now? And so, I don't know, there's a lot of exciting things for the future, but I don't know which way they're going to go. You know, I don't know what's a realistic expectation from them at this point. So
you bring up a couple good points, right? Because it's like, from what we know, and this isn't spoilery, but from what we know, Meracydia is a continent we have not been to, and it's been referenced multiple times. The New World, referenced through the Blue Mage, you know, like we've already known about it, but that's a taste of that area. And then obviously you bring up the 13th Shard as a really important thing, but there's other shards out there that still could yet to be explored. My personal hope when we talk about direction is we stay within the source. I do hope that, because like when we talk about 10 years, like let's estimate that out, assumedly at 4 expansions, easy, if they keep up with the current cadence in terms of how they release content. That gives us lots of places. That actually could give us 2 shards, 2 continents, and a partridge in a pear tree. But at its core, I think it gives us a lot of different direction to go. So I'm going to ask you this, and this is the most important question. Where do you want to go? Like we have shards, we've got the new, like you can only pick one first. Where do you want to go first?
So I think for my money, my choice for like the community is also kind of my choice, and what you kind of got at, which is I think it needs to be terrestrial. I think 7.0 is 100% no way it's not Meracydia or the New World. It's definitely one of those. With some of the references that we've been getting over the past, not just Endwalker, but the patch content, I think Meracydia is the more likely candidate. And I, just on a, you can't help but wonder if they want to avoid the New World with current MMO landscape as it is for a little bit. Because
like Amazon releases the New World and Final Fantasy, like what a dunk! Like if you just think about from an internet memedom, like that would be a massive, massive dunk.
We are lucky that it turns out that the New World is kind of just an Eorzean moniker, so they could totally get away with kind of retconning, oh, we get there and here's the actual name of the continent that the peoples call it.
Yeah.
We also saw in some promotional footage, like not just from Endwalker, whether you played or not, saw photos of the planet and actual images of the planet as a whole of Hydaelyn, which tells us that Meracydia is the size of like Othar or Ilsabard almost combined. And the New World is the size of the 3 great continents and then some. So there's just so much to do there. With that in mind, I think Meracydia is my preferred choice just because of the legacy that we've had so far with, the Warring Triad and Heaven's Word, with Tiamat and Bahamut. And as much as that we've gotten a bunch of like Bahamut stuff, we never really got to see his legacy as an actual being, only in the Primal that came after.
Correct. That's where it's like, from my love of dragons, Meracydia has it's got me curiously piqued. Now, there's another thing that I've obviously been, the speculation of, probably my craziness is that we know Yoshi P talking about 10 years more, 14. Final Fantasy 11 celebrating its 20th year anniversary this year alone, and we're kind of waiting on what kind of news, where's that going to go, what information is still yet to come out. So we still got a little bit of time when it comes to that. I'm just generally curious, especially if they end up taking kind of the New World and bringing in like Vana'diel. Like imagine getting to the New World and it's like, oh, this is Vana'diel. Like, oh wait, what? As a way of just like bringing in, not necessarily would it be like, hey, Final Fantasy 11 players, you're now here, suck it up, but it's more like they brought in the concept of dynamis within the Endwalker storyline, which
it's
was
an invitation to those players.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you think about the fact that like the Memel Jaw, right, are from the New World and they're inspired from 11, I think you could totally see a lot of, at the very least, we're going to see a lot of 11 in the New World, which I actually have some ideas about how we may get Geomancer as the next class. There's a lot of hints towards it, and I could totally imagine them having sort of the bells and stuff like in 11.
I've been adamant 2 expansions now that it's not Geomancer. Twice I've been right. I don't know if I dare go for a third one and be like, no, it's not Geo, but Geo I think would be really exciting to see.
They're so tied to Doma and Hingashi too, and we've never gotten to actually go to Hingashi proper.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like a plot thread, and tie that with the Astrologian job quest, and there's just a lot going on there where I'm like, they totally could do it. But yeah, I also think it's quite possible we only get 1 job next expansion too.
Ooh, all right. Getting into the hot takes, spicy takes here. No, I'm with you. At some point, I feel like them doing 1 job. And then we're like, I think right now that I mean, technically, I feel like we got 3 jobs this expansion.
I agree. Fully agree.
Where it's like, okay, we're going to do 1 job and then we're going to really revisit one other job and explore it in unique ways. But when you look at now the roles, we see 5 melees, 4 tanks, 4 healers. Like I think casters in and of itself are probably a good element, and maybe that's where like if it is Geomancer, where it ends up evolving into, because it's maybe as a caster to offset the astrologian, there that kind of so, oh, hey, healer, and then the stars are health, earth
absolutely
is pain.
And I have a pitch on that, which is that if you think about the way in which at this point the heal for summoner is kind of like vestigial, and even in some ways the res for it is, I can see a world in which they start to split the casters like they've split the healers, where there's barrier and true healers, and with the casters, you could imagine casters that are kind of skewed more towards support, and then those casters that are straight damage. So you could get, so if you got your Geomancer who's, you know, using elements and stuff, but then you have them, like you say, tied to sort of Astrologian, and given there's some hints in the role quests in Endwalker that hint towards maybe, yeah, even more of like a healer DPS being a future thing as well.
That's possible. I mean, that's the thing that I feel when we look at the fact that Endwalkers, I feel really has concluded the saga. I think it actually gives them a lot of playground, a lot of room to play, a lot of room to be like, man, we've always wanted to do this. We've always wanted to explore this, but it doesn't necessarily make sense, especially when we've been on this, you know, narrative structure so hard. And I don't know if and when they decide to really kind of lean more into that saga. I think what they've done well here with this is that it built up to the point where you have to continue pushing forward. And that's the right choice, but that does limit your like ability to be like, man, you know, it would be really exciting to introduce now. And I think that's where, when we talk about the next 10 years, I think we'll see some structural changes. And I've expressed this, like the question meaning like, will we get a patch every X amount, you know, 3.5 months, so to speak? I think Yoshi P, based off what he said, he doesn't like releasing, especially an expansion in the winter, you know, in that kind of time frame. So I think when you look at a structure from now till, let's say they want to hit June again, that does get us on a 2.5 year cycle, unless they did something insane and said, hey, it's just next year, and, you know, we're gonna have a shorter kind of gap. But go ahead.
That's the thing I was wondering too. There's no way it's an 18-month gap. One, just even COVID itself making their life still difficult currently.
To this day.
There's no way that they're going to bring it that far back. Also, I think it makes a lot of sense. Heck, give the 6.x patches, make them more than 5. Give time to put a bunch of groundwork and stuff. Let us just go on some random journeys. Like, that's the time to do that. My big question is the 6.x patch content the first time we're going to see any map released, like a true map released before a patch?
Outside of the exploratory zones, like obviously.
Yeah,
like,
so not like a Boja, but like, could we go to Corvos? The whole Garlemald. Because they set up a whole bunch for it, and it totally could be an expansion thing. And this is one of the things where I'm super worried. I'm going like, okay, this is way too much of an expectation on them. But I feel like if we were ever going to get a patch content map within that, now would kind of be the time, because everything's possible.
Yeah, and if they don't do it in that regards, I could see them making that exploratory content, you know, and that's that's one of the things that's kind of interesting, because I was like, I mean, like when we look at, you know, just Eureka zones, like those are just insane and beautiful zones. And then when we look at like even Zadnor, like I loved what they did in Zadnor, like game wise. But if I was like, you take that Zadnor stuff and you drop that into you know, the Eureka zones, I don't know, like my brain just fritzed out of me. Then I was like, I would like that. I like those systems. I like these zones better. Can we have them have a baby? And maybe that's what we get here. And maybe that's in that Corvos kind of mindset.
Absolutely.
But also, go ahead.
Sorry, there's also a couple of arguments that people I've talked to have posed. The idea of that we could see our Boja or Eureka content as Airslaint, the Rogadan Homeland Island, because there's a bunch of reference to it throughout Endwalker. We're in Sharlayan. We're in that area, and it's something we haven't explored.
Oh, it's a huge, like it's there's so much landmass that we really like don't even see.
My hope is that because Meracydia and the New World are such large landmasses, even if we don't see, you know, like a WoW or Guild Wars 2 style, like enormous exploratory map, we would go into something like a 7.0 seeing maps that one map would be maybe something akin to 2 or 3 in terms of scale for just explore, like the feeling of getting exploration. Because and as someone who's played a lot of MMOs, I kind of miss, that's the one aspect of 14 that I deeply respect, that it can have its sort of confined maps, but not having them interconnect without a load zone there's a flavor to it.
Yeah, I that ends up coming into kind of the final thought as before we wrap up this video. We'll have to get you back, especially as more things come harder into kind of view, become clear with the mist of war fade away. But when it comes to maps, when it comes to that, like honestly, I think the thing I always wonder is that how hard would it be for them to take the original cities and join them as to one, as opposed to kind of having that hard split, which was a technical thing. at the start, and I get why they do it because there's a lot of people coming into those places, and you don't want to sit here and just make them bog down. But then you look at the other later cities, and they're all just kind of one zone, and it ends up being like, man, I remember when these cities were just one area and
Right.
not like split in half. But I think essentially that's the question, that when it comes down to engine, when it comes down to like a new saga, will Yoshi P go as far as to sit here and say, hey guys, like we're going to sit here and say this package 14 is there. You're connected. It's not a new MMO. It's the same MMO, but now it's the next saga takes place in this 17 connected universe. That's the theory that I've been wondering about in terms of that, because when you start looking at some of those bigger changes, they have two options. We can sit here and say that's done. Here's this new thing, or you can sit here and say, hey, we're reworking these zones. We're redoing a lot of this groundwork. And my always question is that how does that actually truly then impact the story that has been told, right?
Absolutely.
My fear comes down into is that, like, when you start to think about it, like, will people want to go and create classic servers for 14 that are the Heavensward area, that are that, or does Square Enix just go ahead and say, like, hey, we get that people still want to play this game as it's experienced in this tale without that kind of radical zone design change, without these bigger like engine change. Who knows? Like only Yoshi
we know what Yoshi P thinks of 1.0 classic servers.
Right.
They are a nightmare. Why would we want that? And then I think when it comes to the cities, I was walking around Ul'dah yesterday and I was thinking that there's the two questions, right? Which is on the technical side, it's probably in a world where we get to a PS5 standard.
Yeah.
There's just no question it's possible, right? It's always a question, I think, with their team, opportunity costs. It's like, do they spend 3 months fixing that, or do they spend those people on making something else, or and I really want, I deeply desire for them to go back and do things like maybe tweak ARR, or to it seems like they might be changing up Praetorium and Castrum.
That's the theory, especially with trusts.
Yeah,
that would be actually a real big win personally, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that the thing I'll say about trust for sure is that is the one thing that I feel like no one should really argue that we shouldn't have it for retroactively in Stormblood, Heavensward, in A Realm Reborn especially. But I understand the fundamental difficulty with their team, right? Is like, who do you attribute that time to? Do you attribute that time to moving forward? Do you attribute that time to fixing the past? And when is the past good enough and should kind of be left alone?
Yeah, and so the software engineer in me is always looking at this very situation and saying, like, when they go and do these things in ARR Heavensward, like, note that is such a love letter to the community, because it actually is so much harder than it would be to sit here, and that's why you tend to see, hey, that change is actually brought in at this expansion and it's forward and it isn't back. Oh, but a fate is a fate. Not really. Like, not really.
Yep. I've worked in QA, so
yeah,
I'm very familiar with how I've had to talk to people. I'm like, okay, this thing that you're saying is very simple.
It's not.
It's not. I know you believe it is.
Right.
But it's not.
Hey, you ever, like, and this is kind of the thing that I always kind of get tickled by, is that typically I'm approached in two ways from a programmatic, both in game, I've made games, and both in software, is that the thing that'll come to me like, I didn't know this is gonna be so hard, and I'm so sorry, but we really needed to do this. And I go, that's actually super easy. We've actually we pre-built everything so I can just plug that into the API. And okay, there you go. It's done, within like a day. And they're like, oh, you're a genius. And then they'll be like, hey, I got something super easy for you. I need this to think like a human being. And so, it's like, you need me to develop an AI that's going to think like you. Well, let's sit down and let's talk about like your 3-year plan and the budget. Cause like, it's so like, I feel like I get the juxtaposition, and that's where when gamers like, it's just so easy. It's like, it's easy on paper, and then the thing that you think is hard is probably going to be the thing they're like, oh yeah, that's done and done. There you go. So,
well, it's not like they're using Unity or Unreal 4 either. It's not like they're working with a subset of tools where the things that you fundamentally can assume, oh, that's a basic thing. Well, it's like they've worked from scratch. Who knows if it's a basic thing for them?
Oh, and then you get, man, this becomes a different conversation, a whole other video. We'll have to get that going.
Sorry.
No, I love it. We're going to get you back. But anyway, we'll wrap up, guys. If you want to hear us talk about like game design and Q&A, let us know. We'll get it back, and we'll sit here and have a fun little follow-up video to this one. Hey, dude, where can people find you?
You can find our team over at the Eorzean Archives on YouTube, and you can find our website at Eorzean Archives. I don't know why I'm pointing to the side. To the Eorzean Archives.
It's on your ceiling.
Somewhere around the Eorzean Archive website, which is just, I believe, the EorzeanArchives.com. And that's... Yeah,
and we'll have them obviously tagged. Sorry to jump in on you on that one.
No, not at all. That's what I find comfortable. It's what I'm used to with my family, frankly.
Oh yeah, like we were talking in the pre-show, guys. Like, we're both Italians. Like, just jump in. And so I always try to do that with everybody. Like, just cut me off, man. Just cut me off. All right, guys, go give them a follow. Go check out all the content that the team is putting together over there for you. I think there's something good. Just all like, whether you finished the story or not, there is a video for you there today. Hopefully you guys enjoy that. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me about this exciting time to be a Final Fantasy fan and player. Anyway, guys, for Work to Game, my name is Brian. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.